Hello and welcome to our webinar. Today's hybrid cloud storage, why HUSCO International left traditional behind. We have three presenters for you today. My name is Mike Ruiz. I'm a partner architect here at Amazon Web Services. We also have Brian Wink, Director of Worldwide System Engineering at Penzer, and we're very pleased to have Eric, CIO at HUSCO International. Today's agenda simple. I'll lead with an overview of AWS and AWS Marketplace with a very brief overview of AWS Storage Solutions to try to set the stage here. Then we'll hand in for an overview of Penzer Solutions, and then we'll hear from Eric Hansen and learn about his success story with AWS and Penzer. Learning objectives. We want to understand why to hybrid cloud storage. We also want to learn how hybrid cloud storage can increase decreasing storage costs by up to hundreds of thousands of dollars annually. So that's a little preview on why we might want to transition to hybrid cloud storage. And without further ado, a super brief overview of the AWS storage ecosystem. The services I'm going to talk about today be an 8-hour. So we're just going to do a really quick topical overview just to help orient you to the ecosystem. So first, why do customers tell us they choose AWS for storage? I think we hear four main things. One we hear a lot is the compelling economics of the solution. You're going to pay for what you use on it with no upfront investment and no long-term commitments required. This can de-risk capacity plan. No longer looking at depreciation schedules. We're no longer trying to predict with pretty good accuracy our use of storage over the long term. Instead, we're going to use what we need when we need it. The services about today have been designed for ease of use with self-service administration available through a console. Additionally, we have a lot of partner solutions available in the AWS Marketplace that can also help with ease of use of these services that we provide, including Penzer. We're going to hear about that solution in just a minute. AWS also offers APIs and SDKs in a variety of languages for integration with the services you're going to hear about today. So this can help developers rapidly take advantage of the services, integrate them with your workflows. It also offers partners a great way to leverage the platform and offer solutions to their customers as well. Customers tell us that using AWS for storage can reduce risk. Of course, the services that we're going to talk about today are durable and secure. But we can also avoid the risk of physical media handling, so we're no longer worrying about maintaining a chain of custody on physical media through its life cycle as the media is maintained, decommissioned. Perhaps we're making offsite copies of tapes and attempting to track those through their life cycle even though they're not in our physical possession. We can also reduce the risk in projects. Because the storage on AWS is online, visible, and auditable at all times, if I have a project that requires that storage, even though it might have been traditionally an offline location, I can check the health, I can check the availability of that. I'm going to know that it's going to be there for me when I need it. So as for instance, in a DR scenario, I'm no longer trying to land a pallet full of tapes with the DR team in a remote location. I know that I've got the storage already in place. And collectively, these features together can improve our speed, agility, our ability to scale, reduce time to market for new products. But I think most importantly, they really help us focus on the needs of our business. Data is obviously one of our most important assets in business, and unpacking the value of that data is totally critical. And by allowing us to focus on the data and on the business value and not the infrastructure, it really helps us build agility and speed into our ability to service our business partners. So finally, we're going to talk about the services here. AWS has a mature storage platform. A lot of different ways to slice and dice this. Showing you here kind of two tiers. On the top, we've got the data services themselves. These are the services that contain data on the platform. Let's start from the left. We have a file service offering called Amazon EFS. It's a file storage service for use with Amazon EC2. This provides a file system interface across multiple nodes. So this allows file system semantics for concurrently accessible storage using in the NFS v4.1 protocol. Moving to the right, we've got block storage solutions. Amazon EBS is a block level storage solution. This is block storage as a service. So this can provide performance to EC2 for where latency latency and where persistence matters. I can choose a variety of different performance and cost profiles for EBS, SSD-backed volumes, HDD-backed volumes. I can dynamically increase capacity, tune performance. I can change volume types all online using the new Elastic Volume feature. Critically, I can snapshot EBS volumes, and I can use that for point-in-time recovery or to hydrate a new cluster. Amazon EC2 Instant Store is a temporary block storage. This is block storage that's aligned with the life cycle of the EC2 host itself. So as the EC2 node comes up, it comes up with Instant Store. If I choose that option, as it goes away, the Instant Store leaves. This is more useful for caching workloads, scratch data, temporary content, or maybe as backing store for some sort of distributed data store. Lots of block storage solutions for various use cases. And finally, we have an object storage. S3 is an example of an object storage service. S3 makes data available through an internet API and that can be accessed anywhere. S3 is designed to deliver 11 nines of durability at scale. So we have many customers each storing billions of objects and exabytes of data. As an example, an S3 object can be up to 5 terabytes in length, and you can have as many objects as you want in Amazon S3. Critically, you're going to pay for what you use with the S3 service. An adjacent service, a complementary service, is Amazon Glacier. This is mostly aligned as a complementary service and more targeted for archival workloads. Finally, this is not very interesting if we don't have good transfer, a way to access the storage. We have AWS Direct Connect, bottom left. This is a peering relationship with AWS, provides a durable and predictable channel and network connection between your data center and AWS. Snowball is a physical device we can ship to you. You can load it up with data, ship it back. We'll put it on S3. We can reverse the streams too. You can put S3 data onto a Snowball and ship it anywhere you like. ISV connectors, of course, event streaming with Kinesis Firehose, edge acceleration, S3 transfer acceleration, storage gateway, moving fast, trying to get through this as quickly as possible. Storage gateway, we'll talk about the use case, is a virtual machine that you can run on premise and use it to provide a gateway to the services that I just mentioned. So now we're talking about kind of hybrid use cases. We can build a hybrid to extend primary storage. You can use native protocols, iSCSI, SIS, NFS, using a gateway product or a partner solution like Penzer. You can also use the native APIs if that makes sense in your use case. We can also extend our backup and archive solutions. Again, I can use native protocols if I prefer to use Amazon S3, Amazon Glacier as a virtual tape. I can do that if I want to maintain a tape paradigm. Perhaps that's important. I might have a lot of legacy procedures and a lot of momentum around using tape in virtual tape libraries. You can use a product like Storage Gateway to present a virtual construct in front of these storage services. Again, using transport, either direct connect peering, a VPN gateway, or VPN over direct connect, however you'd like to use it. Many backup solutions, I'll just use it as an example, Veritas Net Backups can also use S3 natively at this point in time in 2017. What that provides for you is in NetBackup, a media server can use an Amazon S3 bucket directly, and that provides a storage pool that appears to be 16 terabytes in length, at least the last time I saw the product. Of course, you're not going to pay for 16 petabytes. You're not going to pay for 16 petabytes. You're going to use for exactly what you need. This provides you the ability to move your backups around, keep a local backup for quick recovery, push older backups out to Amazon S3 using native features of the software that you might already have. And of course, AWS provides an alignment with a variety of certification and assurance programs, both governmental and industry specific. This is just a quick little subset, a preview of what's available on the platform. I encourage you to go to aws.amazon.com/compliance. Security is job one on the platform, and alignment with assurance programs and certifications in the industry is absolutely something that we're interested in promoting and will continue. And so with that, the very brief overview, again, as promised, we'll hand it off to Brian for a discussion of the Penzer solution.
Mike, thank you very much. And to everyone on the line, I also want to thank you for your time and attention. So I am Brian Wink, and I'm happy to be here with you today. I'm going to talk about Penzer. And as the slide says, we are the leader in unstructured data management in the cloud. And just to be clear, when we talk about unstructured data management, that means a file system. So that could be an NFS, a V4 or below file system, for your Unix, Linux environment, or it could be a SMB/CIFS interface for your Windows type environment, right? And we're going to speak a SMB/CIFS version 3, so maximum version on both. From my perspective, basically my entire professional career, I've been in storage for over 20 years now at a couple of different companies. And from a Panzer side, I'm very excited to be here. You know, if you look at traditional storage, it's not necessarily considered the most sexy of all technologies. There's no flashy blinky lights and all that stuff. However, if you think about what we do with technology, it's all about data. You're either storing data, sending data, moving data, or digesting data. That is what all apps do, right? And access to that data is critical. Durability to that data is critical. The fact that that data will be around when you need it is critical. And I think, you know, what excites me about the opportunity that we have and what Panzer does, and especially when we partner with Amazon, is we leverage a lot of those tools together. Mike talked about the durability, 11 nines that Amazon provides. If you do the math, mere mortals can't build a system with 11 nines, but Amazon has, and they let us use it, right? And so we want to push that forward to our users. The other thing that Mike talked about is all the wonderful technologies there that Amazon has to use. Our goal from a Panzer side is to make those technologies fast and friendly to your end users, right? And that's where presenting those file systems is key, and not just as a gateway, but with intelligence as well, to add caching, policies, authentication, logging, access controls, all these other things that you expect in enterprise-grade storage. So let's talk about it here in a little bit more detail. So first of all, if you look at Penzer, if you go to our website, everything we have is called freedom, right? And that metaphor is played forward in many aspects of our product. The first aspect, which I'll explain here, and I don't have time to explain all the aspects of freedom on this call, by the way, but the first aspect is the freedom of use case, right? If you look at traditional data, there's traditionally two different use cases people have for it. They've got that archive data. You know, this is your last 50 or 100 years, these projects that you need, you can't delete them for various reasons, legal, compliance, you just don't know what you can delete. That's an archive, right? We certainly have that use case, which is wonderful. So it's a very effective and cost-effective method to use that, to have data spinning and accessible at all the time in what I consider ready-to-go format. It doesn't need to be converted or replayed in some way. It's just ready to go right now with the added durability of the cloud. The next one is really in the middle there, that what we call a NAS use case. This is where, you know, you're able to create data and then share it for digestion with others, maybe at your same location or even other remote locations throughout the world. And finally, the third one, which is very unique to Panzer, is the global collaboration, where you're not only able to create it and share it locally, share it globally, but also edit it and work on it globally, as if everyone, the metaphor is as if everyone was in one single building, right? If you think about it, back in the day when Sears built the Sears Tower in Chicago, now named something else, the reason they did that is it was much more efficient to have everyone in that one building. They could work and build that giant company that they once were. And from a data storage standpoint, that's what we're able to provide from a data presentation layer, mated with the protection and versioning that the cloud gives us. So it's really freedom of use case in that first metaphor. As we move forward, if you look at what we do, we've really broken down what we do to these 5 main pillars, right? In our current release, we're on version 7, by the way, so this isn't our first rodeo. In our current release, one of the things that we're very proud of that we've done is we've really, you know, taken down to the ground how we look at, how we analyze, and how we engineer for performance, right? We threw out everything we once know and looked at it with brand new eyes. And the first thing we did is we said, what is the underlying host hardware able to do for us? We wanted to monitor that. Then what we did is everything we layered on top of that, the operating system, the network stacks, the disk stacks, the protocols, the intelligence layer, the policy engines, everything else, we worked hard to profile to minimize any loss or any overhead that those might add so that we could maintain as close as possible that performance of the raw hardware. The result is that freedom of performance, freedom of speed, if you will. How would you like to drive on a freeway with no speed limits? We're working hard to get there, at least from a data standpoint. And in this version, depending on your workflow, you're either going to see a 2 to 10x improvement in overall performance. So we're very proud of that. If you look at the next one, you know, that really expansion or freedom of your data center workflows, right? We focused heavily on our protocols. I mentioned before, both CIFS and NFS for both those kind of desktop users and the more enterprise or engineering type applications on the NFS, Linux, Unix side. And we've really focused on making sure those protocols are at their maximum, enabling us to support and our users to implement really any type of workflow given any type of modern operating system, because we support the maximum level of those protocols. And then you mate that with all the other enterprise level features that you would expect: snapshots, authentication, logging, so on and so forth. So the next pillar is really that freedom of choice for where you run it, right? Penzer is a software company. We effectively sell software-defined storage in one way, shape, or form, right? One way we deploy that software is on hardware that we also ship in what would commonly be considered an appliance version. Other ways we ship it is on local virtualized hardware on top of VMware ESX. And in that model will allow you to take full advantage of anything VMware offers. Smaller hardware, larger hardware, DR, anything it offers. We've really focused on providing that. In addition to that, in addition to the on-prem virtual environment, we also offer cloud virtual environments. So we can also run in the cloud natively. So as an AMI within Amazon EC2. The benefit there is we can provide those hybrid workflows, right? You could do your data collection and mining and spreadsheets by humans locally in a physical building. Alternatively, then you could process that information with the burstability and the horsepower of the cloud that Mike previously described, right? So it's really that freedom of choice of where you're going to do things, and quite honestly, when you're going to do things. Next, we move into that centralized management. You know, everything these days is about simplicity. I've got to have an app. I've got to have something that's a couple clicks. I don't want to read a manual. And to that end, we've really re-engineered how this is managed, right? How it's set up. We've implemented wizards to guide you through it. No education required. Really single panes of glass for management, monitoring, and that day-to-day operations. Really focused on that. Our GUI is a modern Node.js architecture with an API interface, so it can also be integrated into your existing management tools. And finally, Penzer isn't a company that was started as something else and kind of cloud was an afterthought and duct taped on with some old duct tape that's crusty. We were born to be a cloud-backed storage device. So with that, we not only speak natively to the cloud, we speak in the way the cloud wants to be spoken to. We have integrated encryption that's been certified to all the levels necessary, but we've also leveraged the durability of the cloud, those 11 nines, in another way as well. We're able to provide versioning of that data. So I actually can't name a single one of our customers that actually backs up their data that's stored in a Penzer solution backed by Amazon. And the reason that is because the way we write to the cloud, everything is versioned, every edit is non-destructive, therefore every other thing can be retrieved should it be needed. Combined with the durability that Amazon offers, that data will be available should you need it. And in our most current release, we've provided instant rollback to compensate for various viruses and other things that might come out. The various crypto lockers, we can recover that in seconds with a single command. So it's really that freedom to get your data back. And really what we do, this is kind of a cake stack diagram, and this is really my last slide for this presentation. But what we want to do is, I said earlier, it's make the cloud fast and friendly, right? So we want to deliver that enterprise level, that expectation of performance, that click and go. Nobody wants to click and wait, right? I mentioned before at the top, we've got our freedom of choice from the use case, the archive, NAS, and collaboration. And those are all done at the API layer on top of us. We've got our centralized mass management, that single pane of glass, the wizards to make things easy. But really the meat of the product is that darker blue, that intelligence layer. That's really the layer between your traditional NAS and the cloud. It handles how to deal with the metadata. It handles how to do the encryption. It handles how to do real-time consistent locking, right? We're the only company that can do that. It handles how to present that data either in a read-only format or in a read-write format at multiple locations. It handles how to identify what's that critical, valuable data. You might have a 4 or 5 petabyte file system, but of that 4 or 5 petabytes, maybe a couple terabytes is hot and valuable. The machine and that intelligence layer will identify that hot amount such that that hot amount is all the hardware that's required locally. Meanwhile, the cloud is storing the other multi-petabyte file system off in the cloud for protection. It can be retrieved at any time, and we will do that with great efficiency as well due to our other technologies like global dedupe that we put in there. But it's that intelligence layer that makes all the difference for us and what really gives that POW and the fast and friendly comment, right? And just to reiterate the key functionality there, we are a NAS, network attached storage, meaning we present a file system. Again, NFS or CIFS SMB. Again, nobody really backs us up. With our versioning, with our encryption, and with the cloud's durability, there's no real reason to do that anymore. It really simplifies and collapses workflows. The other thing it does is it really helps cost justify it, right? So our ROI is very short as a result of that. We get that cloud data protection, right? Your data is going to be there. You can lose tapes. Tapes can rot. You might not be able to roll trucks in the event of a hurricane. Amazon's cloud will always be there. They've got multiple data centers that will always provide access to that data. Global deduplication and compression, we hold the patent on this. No matter what, when you write data, no matter where it's coming in, what machine, what geography, it's only coming in once. That allows us to efficiently use the cloud and how much of it we use. It also allows us to efficiently move the data when we need to. And finally, that data archival piece. With that, I really appreciate it. I'd like to turn it over to the real star of the show and our honored guest, Eric Hansen, the CIO of HUSCO International. So with that, Eric, it's yours.
Okay, thank you, Brian. Much appreciated, and good morning to everyone. Good afternoon or good evening for our international guests. I'm Eric Hansen, and I head up the IT function at HUSCO International. Before we get started today on my portion of the presentation, I want to just take a moment to introduce folks to HUSCO International. HUSCO is a privately owned company that really prides itself on a culture of ambitious innovation. We have over 30 years of highly focused experience in the design and production of hydraulic and electrohydraulic components aimed to improve the overall efficiency, controllability, and performance for customers across the automotive, construction, and agricultural markets. While you might not have heard of HUSCO, you can find our innovative products in some of the world's most recognized brands, including Ford, General Motors, Volkswagen, Caterpillar, Chrysler, John Deere, and many more. Our product applications span a broad breadth of technology, including things like turbochargers, fuel delivery systems, transmissions, advanced suspension, and control valves, just to name a few. Furthermore, and something that I'm incredibly proud of, HUSCO's ownership group is strongly committed to changing lives in communities through access to quality education. Through their foundation, they've reached more than 100 schools and 20,000 impoverished students in Central and South America. They launched the Schools That Can program to improve urban education in the Milwaukee area, and recently launched a new charter school, St. Augustine Preparatory Academy, in Milwaukee, serving over 600 students this year, with plans to grow to 1,200 to 1,500 students by next year. And these are just a few of the examples of the wonderful philanthropic work sponsored by HUSCO and their ownership group, the Ramirez family. HUSCO is truly a global organization. We have 6 manufacturing facilities spanning 3 continents and international offices in Brazil, Korea, and Germany. Now, I've had the opportunity to oversee successful Penzer implementations coupled with AWS for 2 distinct enterprises. In both instances, we selected the Penzer and AWS solutions because it closely aligned with and even progressed our core IT strategic principles, leveraging cloud and strategic outsourcing to take the focus off supporting commodity IT, taking that time and those dollars saved and reinvesting them to improve our delivery of key business priorities and improve business alignment, and developing a culture of innovation that meaningfully changes business outcomes. With Penzer and AWS, it means that my team no longer needs to focus on managing data propagation within the enterprise, or it allows us to think about information management within the context of critical business processes and not just say, hey, here's a file server, it's a dumping ground. It significantly improves the productivity of our business through near real-time access to information regardless of your seat on the globe. But before we get too far into the solution, I want to talk about how we got here. Why did we need to do anything at all? HUSCO, like many previous companies that I've worked with, and most likely resembling many of the companies represented on this call today, was a global company encumbered by unimaginative file system solutions. We were certainly inefficient. Our file system solution had created access time problems, particularly between international sites. The time it took to pull up a file was wholly unacceptable. We often joked about, with some pain, that if you're in an international site like China and you want to pull up a file in the United States, you double click and go to lunch. And it's just a physics problem. It doesn't matter how much money I throw at bandwidth, there are latency issues that money and bandwidth cannot overcome. Secondly, our system was error prone. Because folks were tired of waiting for files to pull up, they would often create a local copy, store it on their PC, store it on their local file server, and you can understand why they'd want to do this, but for certain processes, this is incredibly dangerous to our company. Our time and our money is spent, managing backups, managing the escalating costs for private networks or the cost of data proliferation. As I've already stated, we're looking for something that aligned with our IT strategy, something where we could leverage outsourcing and cloud technologies to eliminate the distraction of commodity IT, reinvest that, and increase our enterprise agility. In short, for HUSCO, we really needed to change the game. Our answer was to transition from a traditional storage to a consolidated, scalable cloud storage infrastructure powered by Penzer and Amazon S3. We started internationally. Our first implementation was to the United Kingdom, our manufacturing facility in the United Kingdom. And we closely followed that by deployments in our China facility and manufacturing in India. Even before we started to realize the value of global file access and global file synchronization, our employees started to comment on the improved speeds they had accessing files. And this was just due to the quality design of the Penzer appliances themselves. We purchased everything with solid-state drives, which made a big difference over our traditional storage system. Next, we deployed to 2 major data centers in the United States to handle our headquarters and U.S. manufacturing operations and other offices. And this is really when our organization began to realize the value of the Penzer and AWS solution. So what do I mean by changing the game? What do I mean by adding value to the organization? For HUSCO, it means getting the technology out of the way. Our solution here allowed us to attack our areas of opportunity, those pain points, and answer questions of the problems that plague many of us. I'm sure not just HUSCO. How can you provide your enterprise with rapid access to critical information regardless of where they work? How can you ensure that you have a single source of truth? And what can your business do when they don't have to think about technology anymore and manage around its limitations? With Penzer appliances in every major facility, and now leveraging AWS as our master point for storage, data synchronization, and backup, we then implemented the concept of global file shares. This allowed us to access information from around the globe with no more manual copying, no duplication of data, no confusion about where data is located, no forwarding data and files around in emails to make sure people have the right information. And it's allowed us to begin reworking key business processes such as engineering product development. Now, our implementation at HUSCO is relatively new, and I'm going to talk about a more mature implementation in just a moment. But we've already experienced some really solid results this year, some good wins. First of all, international file access is 900 times faster. Now, every time I read that or say it, I generally pull up my calculator and I start validating that number because it just seems impossible. As many of you probably know, when you pull up a file internationally, if it's of any size, waiting 9 to 10 minutes for a file to open is completely possible. With our files now local, we're pulling up those files in 6 to 7 seconds at a maximum, 900 times faster. Secondly, we've eliminated the cost of managing data proliferation and backups. As was already discussed, the vast majority of our data is data that we don't regularly use. That data is in the cloud. We know no matter how much we add to our file system, if we double our data capacity tomorrow, I'm okay. I don't have to add more appliances. I don't have to add more local storage. We will continue to cache the information that is most used, most critical to our organization, and the rest will grow within AWS. Now you might look at this and say, hey, you've implemented something that saved you $100,000 in capital every year, and that's a rounding error in my organization. And frankly, it's not a big number for HUSCO either. But you have to kind of go back to our IT strategic principles, which is that at HUSCO, within IT, when we have $100,000 of savings, we immediately take that and we reinvest that into bringing in more talent, more critical competencies to allow us to deliver more project velocity, to deliver on more strategic outcomes, key business priorities. And finally, we've begun to target some key processes like new product development for engineering, where we quickly realized we had over 10, actually we had 11 different locations where we're storing information for our MPD process, and it caused incredible problems in terms of efficiency, accuracy, and certainly made it challenging to onboard people. And we're going to be able to move that all down to a single location that we can use globally. Importantly, the business is seeing IT innovate. When I came to HUSCO in late 2015, it was a turnaround assignment. It was a situation where IT had not been invested in and was not a key player within the business. And having the business now invite us to the table for other key conversations is a big change and a big step forward. We're getting involved in conversations around things like connected factory. And the bottom line is our voice is being trusted thanks to implementations like this that are driving good business results. So that's the story at HUSCO, and it's a relatively new story. But I want to take just a few minutes now to talk about what you can do with the Penzer AWS solution once you've had some time to evolve and mature it. So this is an example from a company that I was with in 2015 and prior. It was a company that was in a heavy growth mode, a large enterprise, and it was also a manufacturing organization that had a heavy dependency on engineering. Because of our significant growth between the years of 2009 and 2015, we increased our project load and engineering about 3 times. As you know, when you start to scale at that level, it creates new complexity, new risk, and certainly, as you'll see, can add cost to your bottom line. Because we had grown so quickly and our processes and our tools had not, we were having breakdowns with understanding where projects were at. We lacked visibility into the entire portfolio, into individual projects. That, in addition to accountability issues within the process, was causing us to miss product launch targets. Our project data was managed through a loose collection of information, and we weren't doing anything to leverage information as an asset. We experienced that HUSCO as well. When accessing information from international sites, we were dealing with a level of slowness that no one could tolerate. So here's what we did. We said we have 3 key goals. We want to have visualization for our management to control the projects more effectively. We want to understand the cost, the schedule, the performance, the risk. We wanted to be able to visualize by milestone and chart it out in a Gantt view, both for the portfolio and for individual projects. We wanted a single source of truth for project data, so someplace to go that allowed you to understand project health and also have a single place to access all the project documents and assets. And we wanted to improve accountability and execution through clear workflow and ownership and reusable information assets. Our project deliverables were twofold. One, we leveraged that world-class information access and management system that we had through Penzer and AWS and built on top of it a custom new product development, project management tool, I should say, that was aligned to this organization's processes and culture. So what does that do for us? We had some pretty incredible results. So this first graph shows that we had to increase our headcount in our Asia engineering facility year after year. I had mentioned the fact that we grew our project count overall, or our project load, by 3 times. In 2012, we grew headcount in Asia to help manage that new project load by 5%, 10% in 2013 and 2014. In 2015, we increased our project load by another 6%, but for the first time, we didn't hire. You could probably all guess what we did that year. We implemented our Penzer AWS solution, and on that foundation built a custom engineering project management system. This is real impact to the bottom line. One of the reasons that we were hiring like mad during that period of time was because we were missing project launch dates. As you can see from this, over a period of 11 months, we were kind of all over the board, but we were incurring 2+ months of delay on product launches on average. And that doesn't just affect bottom line, that's a top line concern. Missing opportunities to get to market first, missing commitments to customers. After our Penzer and AWS launch, we had 8 months where we hit product launch targets perfectly, and this was an organization that launched a lot of products with regularity. So I guess what I'm saying to everyone today is AWS and the Penzer solutions are game changers in and of themselves, and they will absolutely aid your organization. But I'm challenging everyone to think beyond the file system. This gives you a platform that allows you to reimagine your business and use a modernized file system as a building block for future innovation. So in summary, we're in AWS solutions for the 2 organizations that I've had the pleasure to implement them in, absolutely helped us to create a culture of innovation and improve the perception of IT. We created seamless global collaboration and reduced our file latency by massive amounts. We drove operational excellence and improved our focus, and we cut costs. But most importantly, it allowed us to improve our business performance in a meaningful way. And with that, I'll turn it back over to Mike Ruiz. Mike?
Well, thanks so much for that, Eric. I really appreciate your perspective on those elements. Especially interesting to see the results on the efficiency and the productivity gains. We often talk about that, but I find that it's hard to model in typical kind of TCO tooling or when we're building ROI models. It's hard to see those results. So it's great to see that real data from your organization. So let's advance here to Q&A. So we do have about 15 minutes as discussed for Q&A here. We will stop at the top of the hour. I've got a lot of great questions in the chat. Do encourage everyone to go ahead and add some more questions as they occur to you, or if you had any questions through the session today, go ahead and drop them in there. We'd love to address them. Just a quick couple questions here. Let me see if I can reframe this a little bit, but it's a question I think for Brian. I guess or Brian or Eric, maybe you have some perspective on this as well. Is there anything that we as customers need to do to help prepare for a Penzer solution to help ensure success? Basically, is there anything that we can do to maximize our chances of success, or are there any learnings to prepare for an introduction of Penzer into our organization? Maybe Brian, you'd like to go first.
Sure, I was going to ask Eric to go first, but I'm happy to go first.
Well, I'll let you guys work it out. Thanks.
Yeah, not a problem, not a problem. Thanks, Mike. So, from my perspective, one of the beauties of Penzer being something that looks natural to your user is you don't necessarily need to have any formal planning up front. It's not a requirement. But I'm also going to argue, as a technologist, it's the best and quite honestly the most interesting to really embrace that new technology and really make sure you understand everything that it can do for you, and then how that applies to your environment, how you use your data, how you use your workflows, how your users work, where you're going to expand. And so if you're interested and willing to do that level of planning, Penzer works with you to make sure that that's successful so that you can actually use the technology to its full tilt potential. I would actually like to hear Eric's opinion. I mean, I know you've been through some planning and thinking about it, but overall, Eric, what's your opinion on it?
Yeah, I think there's probably 3 areas that you might want to focus some attention to. One is that the Penzer appliance is synchronized to Amazon through the internet connection, and so wherever you place your appliance, you're going to want to make sure you have a strong internet connection. Now, to me, that's a big benefit because it's pulling that traffic away. That normal file system activity is being pulled off of your private network, whether that's a WAN or a LAN, and it's being placed onto your internet links, which are significantly cheaper in almost all cases. The other thing that I think is a challenge, it's more of a change management activity, is that it's going to give you the opportunity to rethink your applications. You might be changing file paths as we did in the example that I just laid out, when we created a whole new application around the modernized file system. But you're going to want to think about, how do you store information at different parts of the globe? What do you want to bring together? What do you want to keep separate? And you could kind of start that process ahead of time if you have the right the knowledge about it. And then the third thing I would add is that you are going to shift your cost model, right? So it's not going to be significant. The Amazon cost model is pretty golden, but some companies are more sensitive to capital spend. Some are more sensitive to expense side spend. And you're going to start shifting some costs from making capital investments, because you're no longer going to be purchasing drives to keep up with your growth, your data growth. Instead, you're gonna have some billing from Amazon as your growth is there. And so I think a conversation with your finance team to make sure they understand how your cost model is changing is probably a good idea as well.
Okay, great. Thanks for that. Have another question here from the audience. So the question is around support for SDN and NFV's platforms. So in Panzera, are there any kind of considerations or any gotchas that a customer might need to be aware of in when we're trying to support SDNs with the Panzera solution?
Yeah, and this is Brian. I do want to make sure that that's clear. I did mention software-defined storage. That means a lot of different things, right? So I want to be clear on what that means, right? We as a software company have the ability to define where we're running and when we're running, right? There are other products that are truly considered software-defined storage that can layer on top of us, and they would then be able to direct or route storage requests as needed. And so from that perspective, I don't know of any limitations. I certainly haven't encountered any. I'm not going to be so bold to say there are none, because there's probably some out there that I don't know of. But being that we speak standard protocols in the standard way, anything that works with a standard NFS or standard SMB CIFS interface will work with us, and we would plug into it both from a software-defined standpoint, a management standpoint, a logging standpoint, an analysis standpoint, an audit standpoint. All of those would work just fine.
Okay, fantastic. Maybe another question for you, Brian. So this is around support for kind of upstack application designs. So we know that you've got great support for SMB and NFS. Do you support kind of an accelerated mode or direct access using applications that a customer might be writing, or custom applications that they're developing?
So that's interesting. I mean, you're talking about things that we would potentially do in the future. Today, though, we focus directly on unstructured data, files and folders. Where you're getting is more in the structured format. Let me lay down a LUN or use it as a disk or lay it down as a database. And today, we don't encourage that use of our product in that way. I'd say you may see something like that in the near future, but today I would say focus on the files and folders with Penzer.
Okay, fantastic. I know that you mentioned that customers don't typically, when they start using Panzera, we don't back Panzera up or data that's stored on Panzera. But what is the model for backup and disaster recovery? How does that work?
Sure. So the model is when Panzera receives storage, right? When we receive a file or an edit to a file that a user just made, we're going to acknowledge that user locally from our local device. That will be it's only acknowledged once it's on RAID protected disks. Then what we're doing is we're compressing it, deduplicating it to make it as small as possible, and we're moving it out to the Amazon S3 cloud as quickly as possible, right? And so we're typically 1 to 5 minutes out on that. We're asynchronous when we move it to the Amazon cloud. So we're typically 1 to 5 minutes out on that. So our primary agenda when we talk to customers is we look at your RPOs and your RTOs. And typically RPOs are 1 to 12 hours. And so we're in that 5-minute range, which is perfectly fine. We're in that. So their DR and recovery, let's assume that a site would become what's sometimes called a smoking hole in the ground for various reasons. and let's assume everything is destroyed in that site, including the local Panzura. What the DR plan would be is to deploy well, first of all, your data is always accessible. If you have a Panzura living, breathing somewhere, that data is always accessible. That could be in the cloud, that could be virtually somewhere else, that could be physically in another location, domestic or international, I don't care. But let's assume all of your Panzuras were wiped out via some stroke of really big bad luck. The actual recovery plan would be you deploy a new Panzura, you name it the same name as one of the ones that got destroyed. It goes out and looks at the cloud. Basically what it does, it looks around in S3 and it says, really, have I ever been here before? And it's going to find itself because you named it the same name as the previous one, and it will automatically start rebuilding your data. And again, because everything we've written to the cloud is versioned, all those versions get replayed. Effectively, we replay the log in reverse, and all those transactions come back, your files, folders, permissions, attributes, everything gets reconstructed automatically simply by deploying the box and naming it the same name as a previous one. And that's where we're leveraging both our own technology and that durability and the versioning that we lay down to the S3 cloud.
Just a quick follow-on question to that. How does authentication work in that model? Am I using some sort of software token or key to, I name it the same thing, but how am I protected from somebody else naming their filer the same as mine and going and getting my data? Is that a problem I need to worry about?
Fortunately, it's not a problem you need to worry about, but it's a great question. I appreciate you asking because it should be asked. And so, first of all, there's two different levels, right, of authentication. When you look at a Panzura, we effectively have two personalities. Our client-side personality, where we're going to speak to deliver the file system, right? And there we're going to plug into things like Active Directory, your traditional authentication and access control tools, right? On the other hand, when we talk to the cloud, when we talk to S3, we're talking to S3 in the user's account. First of all, it is the user's account. It's not an account via Panzura. The user, in Eric's case, it's a HUSCO Amazon account. Eric's team defines a bucket, which is unique within Amazon. And then within the Panzura controller, you basically tell us, here's the bucket ID, and here's my public and private keys, effectively the username and password for the Amazon S3 bucket. Those guarantee that that bucket is unique and you're the only one that can have access to it. And then finally on the box itself, on our software, users can deploy their own encryption keys. These are user defined. They submit them either manually or with like a KMIP server. And then all the data that was sent to that cloud originally is actually encrypted with one-time use keys that are spawned from that encryption cert that the user put onto the Panzura. So everything out in the cloud is not only secured and authenticated, but also uniquely encrypted as well. So in order for a user to actually get something out of the cloud, they would need access to your account, they would need credentials to your account, they'd have to know the name of the bucket, they'd have to have a Panzura, and they'd have to have the encryption cert to get everything back. If one of those things is missing, that data is not coming back, right? So that's how we guarantee encryption and security, and that process has been authenticated and certified by a NIST, the organization that does these types of things and really says, hey, the federal government and other, three-letter acronym organizations can use our product. So that's all been certified by them.
Okay, thanks for that additional detail. So here's a question, Brian, this might be something you can speak to, or Eric, I'm not sure if you have any experiences here as well. So I think we know that Panzura, from the conversations here, we know that S3 can scale, and we know that Panzura can scale. Is there a sensible kind of lower limit to get started? Where I think we promised at the top of the webinar to talk about, when to go. Is there a lower limit, barriers to entry to get started if I'm a smaller customer?
I'll take that, and Eric, certainly if you have comments as well. I mean, you've got to have a fair amount of data, right? If you're coming to me and you say, hey, I've got 5 gigabytes of data, that's too small. You're not going to deploy any level of enterprise storage for that. However, if you're at all considering an enterprise level storage device, Panzura has models and can be cost effective across the range. Really, when I'm out there looking, I'm taking kind of that low bar. I'm listening for 15, 20 terabytes of data as kind of my low end. But there are other use cases where the user might say, hey, I've only got 5 terabytes, but it's really critical and I need to have it shared across, these different geographies. Well, that's a different story. So it's not always about data capacity. It sometimes could be about your data sharing needs. But ultimately, you want, you know, a rational amount of data that you would consider deploying something other than what you would buy maybe off your favorite Best Buy or something like that down the street.
Got it. Eric, so I think we learned a little bit about kind of your triggers, kind of really unacceptably poor access and performance, and some issues with kind of authoritative copies. Were there any other kind of triggering cases for you, or to let you know that you needed to change your model?
Part of our decision was lifecycle based. We were in a position where we know we needed to make some investments anyways, and then it became a matter of how does it make sense to invest those dollars. And I guess back to that last question we just had, you know, both organizations I've been in have had a significant amount of data, but I would never look at it as a kind of a bar of entry. It's really a cost of value, right? So you may have a smaller amount of data that you absolutely need to have protected, that you have to have shared effectively, right? That has to be kept aligned and in tune no matter where it is. And the value to your organization might be significant enough that, you know, an enterprise solution makes sense, even if your amount of data is relatively small. So, you know, it's just a different perspective on that.
Awesome, and thank you for that perspective. Well, with that, we're approaching the top of the hour here. So I think we got through most of the questions in the chat. There might be one or two there. We'll just go through and make sure we got everybody addressed. Take those up with you in email. I'd like to invite everyone to try Panzera for free by visiting the URL that we have here. It's panzera.com/demo. And also, I'd like to invite everyone that may be attending reInvent or thinking about attending reInvent here near the end of 2017. I think we're in late November 2017. Panzera is sponsoring, and they'll be in booth 635. It's impressive that we already know the booth for that, so that's a great level of detail. Anyway, I'd like to invite everybody to go check that out. So thank you very much, Brian, for the Panzera perspective, and thank you very much, Eric Hansen, for your learnings. And we will close the webinar now. There will be a link to a recording in your inbox within a few days, a link to the deck as well. And then just like to remind everyone that there will be a survey here, a quick survey, just a couple seconds of your time. We'd love it if you'd fill that out. So thanks everyone for joining us today, and we'll see you next time.